Hello, everyone. This is Eleanor Rigby. I was sitting here in my kitchen this morning, holding this small rusted keyset on a frayed blue ribbon, and I just couldn't stop my hands from shaking a little. This isn't the key to a house or a fancy jewelry box. It's the spare key to a 1974 Chevrolet Nova that we haven't owned in 40 years. Looking at it now, in the quiet of a house with central heating and a soft bed, it reminds me of how quickly the world can slip out from under your feet. If I hadn't gone through those 90 days, if I hadn't lived through the cold and the shame of that car, I would have lost the only thing that ever truly mattered. I would have lost my soul, and I would have lost the man I loved. Before I tell you this story, please subscribe. I want to pass this wisdom down before I'm gone, so you don't make the same mistakes I did, and so you can see the beauty in the struggle. It was 1978. People talk about the 70s like it was all disco lights and bell-bottoms, but for a young couple in the Midwest, it felt like the air was being sucked out of the room. My husband, Thomas, had been laid off from the mill, and I was working part-time at a diner that was seeing fewer and fewer customers every week. We were proud. Oh, we were so incredibly proud. We didn't tell our parents how bad it was. We didn't ask for help. We just watched the bank account dwindle until the day the landlord knocked on the door and told us we had 48 hours. I can still hear the sound of the packing tape. It's a harsh, ripping sound that follows me sometimes in my dreams. We didn't have anywhere to go, no safety net, just that gold-colored Chevy Nova and whatever we could cram into the trunk. And the back seat. I remember looking at Thomas as he locked the door to our apartment for the last time. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in a single afternoon. He wouldn't look me in the eye. He just kept saying, "I'm sorry, El, I'm so sorry." The first night was the hardest. We parked in a rest area off the interstate. I remember the smell of that car, stale coffee, old upholstery, and the metallic scent of damp coal. It was late autumn, and the frost was starting to creep across the windows by midnight. We lay there, squeezed together in the back seat, trying to find a way to fit our limbs around each other. I cried silently, trying not to let the car shake because I didn't want him to feel the weight of my fear on top of his own. Failure. Young people today might not understand this, but back then, there was a different kind of shame attached to being without a roof. You felt invisible and exposed all at the same time. For 3 months, 90 long, grueling days, that car was our entire world. We lived on canned soup heated over a small portable burner we'd sneak into the parks. We washed ourselves in gas station bathrooms, trying to look normal so no one would call the police or look at us with pity. I'll tell you the truth. There were moments in that second month where I hated him. I'm ashamed to say it now, but I did. I would look at him while he was sleeping, his jaw tight even in rest, and I would think, how did you let this happen? Why am I sleeping in a car at 26 years old? We had fights. Not the kind of fights where you slam doors, because there were no doors to slam without waking up the whole parking lot. They were whispered, vicious arguments about a dropped fork or a cold blanket. I remember screaming at him in a hushed tone, telling him I wanted to go to my mother's, that I couldn't take the smell of the car anymore, that I couldn't take the feeling of being hunted by the cold. Thomas just sat there. He let me rail against him, and then he reached out and took my hands. His hands were cracked from the wind and stained with the oil of the odd jobs he was trying to pick up. He said, "Eleanor, if you want to go, I will walk you to the bus station myself. I will give you every dime we have left, but if you stay, I promise you I will spend the rest of my life making sure you are never cold again." That was a turning point. Not when the money came, but when the loyalty was tested. I realized in that moment that loyalty isn't about standing by someone when the sun is shining and the bills are paid. Any fool can be a good spouse when life is easy. Loyalty is what happens when you're stripped of everything: your home, your dignity, your comfort, and you look at the person next to you and realize they are the only home you have left. We stayed in that car through the first snow of December. We survived by huddling together for warmth, literally sharing the heat of our bodies to stay alive. I learned more about Thomas in those 3 months than I did in the 50 years that followed. I learned that he was a man who would go without eating so I could have the last bit of bread. I learned that he would stay awake while I slept to make sure no one approached the car. I learned that he was a man of his word. It wasn't easy. In fact, it was the hardest year of my life. But when he finally landed a steady job as a mechanic, and we saved enough for a tiny one-bedroom basement apartment, that place felt like a palace. I remember the first night we slept in a real bed again. We both woke up in the middle of the night, unable to sleep because it was too quiet, too soft. We ended up pulling the mattress onto the floor and sleeping, huddled together, just like we had in the Nova. And we couldn't break the habit of being close. Experience has taught me that we live in a world now where everything is disposable. If a phone breaks, you get a new one. If a relationship gets uncomfortable, you swipe for someone else. But you have to understand something. You have to listen to an old woman who has seen the seasons change 80 times. Love isn't a feeling you have. It's a decision you make every morning, especially the mornings when the windows are covered in frost and you don't know where your next meal is coming from. Modern dating, from what I see with my grandchildren, seems to be about finding someone who completes your lifestyle. But marriage isn't about lifestyle, it's about life. It's about the grit and the grind. If you are looking for a partner, don't look at how they treat you at a fancy dinner. Look at how they treat you when the car won't start and the rain is pouring down. Look for the person who will sit in the dark with you and not try to run for the light. Patience, sacrifice, communication, those aren't just words you hear in a Sunday sermon. They are the tools of survival. My late husband used to say that our marriage was forged in that Chevy Nova. The heat of our struggle burned away all the superficial things, all the I wants and the I needs, until all that was left was we are. We didn't have a penny to our names, but we had a loyalty that was worth more than all the gold in the paradise world. I promise you, if you can find a way to be loyal when there is nothing to be gained from it, you will find a richness that no bank account can hold. Think about that. Think about the person you're with. Would they sit in that car with you? And more importantly, would you sit in it with them? I lost Thomas 4 years ago, and as I sit here in this big house we eventually built together, I realized that I would give up every square inch of this beautiful home just to spend one more night in that cramped, freezing back seat of the Nova, as long as he was there holding my hand. I wish for you a life that is full of joy, but I also wish for you the kind of struggle that proves your heart. I wish for you a love that doesn't break when the world gets heavy, because the long-term implication of loyalty is a peace that passes all understanding. It is the knowledge that you were never truly alone, even when you had nothing. Thanks for listening to An Old Soul. Subscribe, share this with someone you love, and cherish them while they are here. Don't wait for the hard times to tell them you're staying. Tell them now and then. When the frost comes, and it will come for everyone eventually, you'll know exactly whose hand you're holding. Would you like me to write a similar memoir script focused on a different life lesson, such as the importance of forgiveness or raising children?